The hall was so large that it made people feel small without trying. Its ceiling was filled with floating crystals, each glowing with soft colors that shifted like slow-moving clouds. Ancient light poured through tall windows made from strange alien materials that no human scientist could fully explain. This place was called the Grand Concord Hall. For thousands of years, this hall had decided the fate of entire species. Ambassador Ilara Vance walked alone across the smooth floor. Each step echoed loudly, even though she moved calmly. She was not tall. She was not powerful-looking. Her black suit was plain, without medals or symbols. Gray strands ran through her dark hair, and her eyes showed the weight of too many sleepless nights. Compared to the rulers waiting for her, she looked fragile. The rulers of the galaxy sat in a wide arc before her. 12 thrones, 12 ancient powers. Some glowed with energy. Others looked carved from living stone. One floated inside a clear liquid chamber, its shape constantly changing. These were the elder rulers. They had ruled the galaxy for over 6,000 years. To them, humanity was young, weak, temporary. Ilara stopped at the center of the hall and stood straight. She felt fear in her chest, but she did not let it show. "You are the representative of Earth," said one ruler, its voice smooth and cold. "State your purpose." "I am Ambassador Ilara Vance. I speak for Earth and all human colonies." The rulers exchanged slow, knowing looks. "You seek protectorate status, a wise request. Young species survive longer when guided by those who understand power." Ilara listened as they explained the terms. Humanity would shrink its military. Humanity would give up some colonies. Humanity would pay tribute every year. In return, the Concord would offer protection. Ilara already knew what this truly meant. It meant obedience. Every species that accepted these terms slowly faded away. Their culture weakened. Their choices disappeared. Their future was no longer their own. When the rulers finished speaking, silence filled the hall. "Do you agree?" one of them asked. Ilara took a slow breath. "I do not," she said. The hall froze. Crystals stopped moving. Light seemed to pause. "You misunderstand," a deep, rumbling voice replied. "This is not a suggestion. This is the only path allowed." Ilara's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "Humanity does not accept a future where freedom is traded for safety." Anger flickered through the rulers. "Then you choose destruction," one said. "You are signing your species' death." Ilara looked at them, really looked. "We choose something else," she said quietly. She reached into her pocket, and the moment she activated the device, the galaxy's rulers realized this human had not come to beg. She had come prepared. And in that silent hall of gods and empires, humanity was about to reveal a truth that would shake the galaxy forever. The small device in Ilara Vance's hand came to life with a soft hum. Light burst outward, forming floating images in the air. Star maps, routes, symbols marked in sharp red lines. Gasps echoed through the massive hall as the rulers leaned forward. "These locations," Ilara said calmly, "are not human worlds." The rulers stiffened. "They are yours." The glowing maps shifted. Hidden supply depots appeared, secret shipyards, energy relay stations that were never meant to be seen by outsiders, even ancient emergency routes, paths the Concord believed were forgotten by time. One of the rulers rose slightly from their throne. "Impossible! This information is sealed beyond anyone you considered a threat, Ilara finished. That was your mistake. The hall buzzed with rising anger and disbelief. For over 200 years, you watched us. You sent observers. You laughed at our ships. You labeled us harmless. Her eyes hardened. While you watched our strength, we studied your habits. The maps zoomed in again. Red marks appeared at narrow points between systems. These are choke paths, trade arteries, places where your empire breathes. Silence followed. You spy on us? One ruler hissed. No, Ilara said. We learned you. She straightened her shoulders. You rule by fear. You teach younger species that resistance is death. But fear only works when no one dares test it. The ruler in the liquid chamber finally spoke, their voice echoing from all directions. And what do you believe will happen now, human? Ilara answered without hesitation. You will think twice. A ruler slammed a clawed limb against their throne. You dare threaten the Concord with shadows and maps? Ilara deactivated the projection. The light vanished, leaving only her standing in the center of the hall. We are not threatening you, she said softly. We are warning you. She took a slow step forward. If you attack us, you may win. You have more ships, more weapons, more experience. Her voice dropped, heavy with meaning. But every system you lose will cost you more than ships. Every world you burn will wake others who fear you. Every battle will teach the galaxy that you can bleed. The rulers exchanged uneasy glances. You would sacrifice your people to make a point? One asked. Ilara nodded once. We already have. Her voice cracked slightly, but she did not stop. Humans have never waited for permission to exist. We crossed oceans without maps. We challenged kings. We survived disasters we created ourselves. She looked up at the towering rulers. Freedom has always cost us blood. We pay anyway. The hall trembled as energy surged through the thrones. Leave, a ruler commanded, before we erase your species. Ilara turned without fear. One last thing, she said over her shoulder. If you want peace, real peace, leave us alone. She walked away, her footsteps echoing again. Behind her, ancient rulers stared at one another, shaken. For the first time in 6,000 years, someone had said no and lived to walk away. And as Ilara returned to Earth, the Concord made a decision that would turn a warning into a war, and humanity into a legend. The Concord did not wait long. 3 days after Ilara Vance returned to Earth, the galaxy felt it. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of human-controlled space, near a quiet colony called Haven Reach. It was not a military world. No shipyards, no weapons factories, just families, farms, and mining stations. That was the message. Fear spread quickly through the colony. Emergency alarms echoed through streets and underground tunnels. Parents held their children close. Old settlers stared at the sky they had once believed was safe. The Concord fleet commander, Admiral Corthax, watched the planet from his command bridge. He had crushed rebellions older than human history. To him, this was not war, it was discipline. "Prepare planetary strike," he ordered calmly. But before the command could be executed, his tactical officer froze. "Admiral, we have incoming signals." "From where?" Corthax snapped. "From civilian vessels." Corthax narrowed his eyes. Haven Reach had no military base within 3 days of travel. Concord intelligence had confirmed it. Yet now ships were emerging from behind moons, asteroids, and trade routes. Cargo haulers, mining barges,
transport shuttles, hundreds of them. "They're arming," the officer whispered. Korthax felt irritation, not fear. Civilian ships cannot fight warships. On one screen, a transmission opened. A human woman appeared. Her face was lined with age, her hair tied back, her eyes steady. "This is Haven Reach Defense," she said. "You are not welcome here." Korthax laughed. "Who are you to issue commands to the Concord?" "My name is Rosa Hale. I grow food. I raised 3 children on this rock." Her voice sharpened. "And I will not watch it burn." The screen went dark. Human ships surged forward. They were badly armored, poorly shielded. Many were held together by fresh welds and emergency plating, but they moved with purpose. Explosives detonated in space as human ships targeted supply craft first. Fuel vessels erupted. Communication relays vanished in fire. "They're ignoring our cruisers," an officer shouted. "They're tearing apart our support lines." Korthax's irritation turned into shock. Human ships rammed Concord vessels at full speed. Mining drills tore through hulls. Overloaded engines exploded like suns. "They're not retreating," the officer screamed. "Why aren't they retreating?" Because humans didn't come to win. They came to make it hurt. The battle lasted 6 brutal hours. Haven Reach lost ships. Families lost loved ones. Rosa Hale's vessel never returned. But when the smoke cleared, the Concord fleet pulled back. Haven Reach still stood. Korthax stared at the damage reports in disbelief. Nearly half his fleet was gone. Worse than that, the humans had known he was coming. That realization chilled him far more than the losses. This was not chaos. This was preparation. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. A farming colony had defied the Concord and survived. But Haven Reach was only the beginning, and the Concord was about to unleash something far worse than punishment. The Concord did not call the battle at Haven Reach a defeat. They called it an irregular event. Official reports claimed the losses were acceptable and the humans desperate. But inside Concord command chambers, fear had begun to whisper. Admiral Korthax stood before a projection of the Elder Council. His armor was scorched, his pride worse. "They were civilians," one ruler said coldly. "Explain how civilians damaged a Concord fleet." "They did not fight like civilians," Korthax replied. "They fought like beings who believed they were already dead." That answer unsettled the chamber. Humans were supposed to fear extinction. Every species did. That fear was the foundation of Concord rule. Yet humans seemed to carry something stronger than fear: defiance. Within days, Concord intelligence reported disturbing developments. Human factories had stopped producing luxury goods. Civilian shipyards were converting into weapons platforms. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers faster than they could be processed. Humanity was not panicking. Humanity was preparing. On Earth, Ilara Vance stood before the United Assembly. The room was packed. Some faces showed fear. Others showed anger. Many showed grief. "We have lost people, parents, friends, children." Her voice shook, but she continued. "But Haven Reach showed us something important." She looked around the room. "They will strike civilians first. They want us afraid. They want us divided." Her eyes hardened. "So we give them the opposite." The assembly rose to its feet as one. Across human space, something changed. Independent colonies opened their armories. Merchants donated ships. Engineers worked without sleep. Even artists and teachers volunteered where they could. This was not ordered. It was instinct. The Concord launched its next move weeks later. A massive armada gathered near the terminus gate, the main passage into human territory. Thousands of ships waited, darkening space like a storm. This time, there would be no warning strikes. This time, they would erase humanity completely. Admiral Chen Arlo, commander of Earth's defense fleet, watched the incoming armada from his bridge. They were outnumbered nearly 3-1. "Sir," an officer said quietly, "we cannot win a direct fight." Chen nodded. "Good." The officer blinked. "Sir? We're not fighting directly." For months, humans had been working in silence around Terminus Gate. Mining crews, repair teams, engineers, all hiding something massive inside normal operations. The Concord never noticed. They believed humans were incapable of long-term planning under fear. That belief would destroy them. As the Concord fleet began passing through the gate, Chen raised his hand. "Wait," he said. Ship after ship emerged, hundreds, then thousands. "Now?" an officer whispered. "Not yet," Chen replied calmly. "Let them commit." When over half the fleet had crossed, Chen lowered his hand. "Now." The order went out. Charges hidden inside the gate ignited. Space twisted. The terminus gate collapsed inward with violent force. Ships still passing through were torn apart instantly. The Concord fleet was split, trapped, cut off. For the first time in 6,000 years, the Concord had walked willingly into a cage. And as the gate collapsed behind them, the Concord finally realized this was no longer their war to control.
The moment the terminus gate collapsed, silence filled the command bridges on both sides. Then, chaos exploded. Concord ships scrambled to reorganize. Formations broke apart. Emergency signals flooded their channels, overlapping and unreadable. "They're trapped," a human officer whispered in disbelief. Admiral Chen Arlo did not smile. "Now they understand," he said quietly, "and now they'll fight harder than ever." The Concord fleet still outnumbered humanity. Their ships were larger, stronger, built for war across millennia. In a normal battle, humans would not last an hour. But this was not a normal battle. Human ships emerged from everywhere, from asteroid fields, from behind debris clouds, from places Concord's sensors had ignored as empty. They were not all warships. Mining vessels surged forward, drills glowing white-hot. Cargo haulers drifted close before detonating their cores. Small shuttles flew in tight formations, targeting engines and communication arrays instead of armor. "Why are they attacking like this?" a Concord captain shouted. Because humans were not trying to destroy ships. They were trying to cripple hope. Human pilots did not retreat when hit. They pushed closer. When weapons failed, they rammed. When engines burned out, they overloaded reactors. Lieutenant Tara Mendez guided her damaged ship straight toward a Concord cruiser twice her size. "Lock course," she told her crew. "But we won't survive," someone began. "I know," Tara replied softly. "Make it count." Her ship struck the cruiser's engine core. Both vanished in fire. All across the battlefield, similar choices were being made. Not because humans loved death, but because they refused submission. The Concord had never faced an enemy like this. Their doctrine valued survival. Withdrawal was logical. Surrender was acceptable if it preserved the future. Humans did not think that way. To humans, a future without freedom was not a future at all. Hours passed. The battlefield filled with wreckage, twisted metal, shattered hulls, silent drifting bodies. Emergency jump attempts failed. The broken gate left no easy escape. Admiral Chin watched casualty numbers climb, every loss cut deep. But then, the impossible happened. Concord ships began to retreat. Not because they were losing completely, but because they were breaking. Their commanders had never trained for an enemy that did not fear death. This is madness," a Concord officer transmitted before fleeing. "No," Chin whispered. This is humanity. After 9 brutal hours, the battle slowed. Half the Concord fleet was gone. Human losses were devastating, but space still belonged to humanity. On Earth, people watched the battle unfold in silence. Some cried, some prayed, some just held each other. When the final update arrived, no one cheered. They just breathed. Humanity had survived, not by being stronger, but by refusing to kneel. And as the Concorde retreated in shock, the rest of the galaxy began to ask a dangerous question. What if the humans could actually win?
The Concorde retreat sent shockwaves far beyond human space. For 6,000 years, the galaxy had believed one truth: the Concorde always wins. That belief shattered the moment their fleet fled from Terminus Gate. Across thousands of worlds, screens lit up with the same images: burning wreckage, broken warships, and human vessels still standing among the ruins. At first, many species thought it was a mistake, a misreport, a temporary setback, an exaggeration. But the data kept coming. Half a Concorde armada destroyed. The gate collapsed by human design. Civilian ships used as weapons. The truth became impossible to ignore. On worlds that had lived under Concorde rule for centuries, something long buried began to stir: hope. On the water-covered planet Cerathus, elders gathered in secret chambers. Their ancestors had once ruled themselves before Concorde fleets arrived and offered protection. "We were told resistance was pointless," one elder said quietly, "but the humans resisted and survived." On the desert world Karn Do, shipwrights delayed Concorde orders, claiming supply shortages. On trade hubs across the galaxy, tribute shipments slowed. Questions replaced obedience. And in the shadows, whispers spread: if humans can bleed the Concorde, maybe we can too. Back on Earth, victory felt heavy. Admiral Chen Arlo stood alone on the damaged bridge of his flagship, staring at the drifting remains of thousands of ships, human and alien, enemy and ally, all silent now. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Names filled his thoughts: pilots who never came back, volunteers who knew they would not survive, entire crews lost in blinding flashes of light. "Sir," an officer said softly, "Earth is requesting a report." Chen nodded slowly. "Send him this," he said. "We held the line, but we paid for every second." The message reached Earth within minutes. People did not celebrate. Cities held quiet vigils instead. Candles burned in streets. Names were read aloud. Strangers hugged strangers. Freedom had never felt so fragile. Ilara Vance watched it all from a balcony overlooking Geneva. The sky above Earth was calm, almost cruel in its beauty. She had known war would come. She had not known how much it would hurt. A young aide approached her. "Ambassador, we're receiving encrypted messages from non-human systems." Ilara sharpened. "How many?" "More every hour." "What do they want?" The aide swallowed. "They want to talk. They want to know how you did it, and if you'll stand with them." Ilara closed her eyes for a moment. This was the moment she had hoped for and feared, because helping others rise meant more war, but turning away meant becoming what they had fought. Open the channels, quietly. The galaxy was no longer sleeping, and once awake, it would never accept chains again. As secret alliances formed in the dark, the Concorde prepared its most dangerous response yet, and this time it would not come alone. The Concorde Council gathered an emergency session. The Crystal Hall felt different now, dimmer, smaller. The rulers who once radiated absolute confidence now shifted uneasily on their thrones. Half their great fleet was gone.
Worse than that, the galaxy had seen it happen. "This rebellion must end," one ruler hissed. "Now!" "It is no longer just humanity," another replied. "Others are hesitating. Tribute delays are increasing. Protector fleets are recalling ships." Anger rippled through the chamber. "They owe us loyalty," the Empress snapped. "We gave them peace." The Sonari observer floated silently before speaking. "What you call peace, many experienced as fear." The room fell quiet. "If fear no longer works," the observer continued, "then force alone will not save us." The Empress slammed her throne with glowing tendrils. "Then we escalate." Plans unfolded quickly. Not another fleet, not another warning strike. Something final, something irreversible. Meanwhile, far from Concord space, Ilara Vance sat in a dimly lit room, surrounded by holographic figures, representatives of species who had lived under Concord control for generations. They spoke carefully, quietly. "We cannot declare openly," said one. "Not yet." "But we can help," said another. "Information, supplies, safe routes." Ilara nodded. "That's all we ask. Freedom spreads best when it survives." One by one, the figures vanished. Humanity was no longer alone, but the cost of leadership weighed heavily. Reports arrived daily: skirmishes, sabotage, sudden disappearances. The Concord was tightening its grip on wavering systems. Then the message came. A Concord weapon had been activated. Not a ship, a device, ancient, forbidden, designed to erase entire star systems. "They're going to burn worlds," an analyst said in disbelief. "Not just ours." Ilara's blood ran cold. "They'll make an example so terrible no one dares rise again," she whispered. Admiral Chen Arlo joined the briefing, his face pale. "We don't have the strength to stop it directly." Ilara looked around the room. "Then we don't stop it directly." A risky plan formed, one that relied on speed, sacrifice, and the help of those still hidden in the shadows. If they failed, entire civilizations would vanish. If they succeeded, the Concord would lose its greatest weapon. Time was running out. And as the countdown to annihilation began, humanity prepared for the most dangerous mission it had ever attempted. The weapon had a name older than most stars: the Void Crown. It was not a ship, it was not a bomb. It was a machine built around a dying star fragment, designed to collapse space itself. When activated, an entire system would simply disappear. No explosion, no warning, just silence where life once existed. The Concord had used it only twice in history. Both times, rebellion ended instantly. Now they were preparing to use it again. The target was not Earth. That was the cruel genius of it. The target was a protectorate world, Lyris Vale, home to billions who had begun quietly resisting Concord rule. "If they fire it," an intelligence officer said, voice shaking, "every species watching will fall back into fear." Ilara Vance closed her eyes. "They're not trying to win a war," she said. "They're trying to kill hope." Admiral Chen Arlo folded his arms. "We can't reach the weapon with a fleet. It's too heavily guarded." "Then we don't send a fleet," Ilara replied. The plan was simple and almost suicidal. A small strike group would slip through unstable jump routes, paths too dangerous for large Concord vessels. They would reach the Void Crown station and destroy its core before activation. There would be no rescue. Everyone knew that. The volunteers stepped forward anyway. Pilots, engineers, medics, even civilians who had lost family at Haven Reach or Terminus Gate. Commander Jalen Cross, leader of the mission, addressed them quietly. "We're not heroes. We're buying time. Maybe freedom. Maybe just a chance." No one stepped back. The strike group launched under radio silence. Across the galaxy, time seemed to slow. On Lyris Vale, families went about their days unaware that extinction hovered above them. Children played beneath twin suns. Elders watched the skies, uneasy but hopeful. The Void Crown began charging. Inside the station, Concord overseers monitored energy levels with cold precision. They believed the galaxy would kneel again. They did not expect humans. Jalen's team breached the outer hall using mining cutters. Alarms screamed. Gravity failed. Fighting erupted in narrow corridors. Humans moved fast. They didn't aim to survive. They aimed to finish the job. Explosions rocked the station as engineers overloaded containment fields. Concord defenders fought fiercely, but they hesitated when humans refused to retreat. "Why won't they run?" a Concord officer shouted. Because running would mean silence. Jalen reached the core chamber as energy levels spiked into the red. He opened a final channel. "This is Commander Cross," he said calmly. "Tell Earth, tell them it was worth it." The core collapsed inward. The Void Crown died. The station vanished in a blinding surge of light. Lyris Vale still shone beneath its suns. Hope survived. But the destruction of the Void Crown would force the Concord into a final choice and the galaxy into its last stand.
The moment the Void Crown went silent, the Concord felt it. Alarms echoed across their core systems. Energy readings dropped to zero. Ancient monitors confirmed the impossible. The weapon was gone. For the first time in recorded history, the Concord had lost a symbol of absolute control. Panic followed. Orders contradicted each other. Fleets repositioned without purpose. Protectorate governors demanded explanations they did not receive. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than fear ever had. The Void Crown had been destroyed, not by a great armada, but by a handful of humans who never came home. On Lyris Vale, the skies remained blue. People sensed something had changed. When confirmation arrived, the planet erupted, not in celebration, but in relief. Entire cities fell silent before voices rose together in tears and prayers. They were alive. On Earth, Ilara Vance stood before the United Assembly once more. This time, no cameras, no speeches prepared. "We lost them," she said softly. Silence answered her. They knew they wouldn't return. They went anyway. A representative whispered, "Did they succeed?" Ilara nodded once. Then the assembly stood, every single member, not in applause, in honor. The Concord Council met again, but the hall no longer felt like the center of the universe. The Empress's glow flickered weakly. Even her rage sounded tired now. "They destroyed the crown," she said, "with volunteers." The Cenari observer spoke gently. "Fear no longer protects us." Some rulers demanded immediate retaliation. Others said nothing at all. Outside Concord space, the effect was immediate. Protectorate fleets stopped answering calls. Governors announced temporary independence. Species who had never spoken against the Concord began forming defensive pacts, not against humanity, against domination. A coalition was forming. Ilara received the messages one after another, requests for alliance, for guidance, for hope. She answered each one carefully. "Stand together," she told them. "No one survives alone." Admiral Chen Arlo watched the data streams with disbelief. "This isn't just rebellion, it's a collapse." "Yes," Ilara replied quietly, "because they ruled by fear, and fear just failed." The Concord still had fleets, still had weapons, still had power. But power without belief was only weight, and weight always falls. In the Crystal Hall, the Cenari observer recorded a final note for the archives. "This is the moment
The age of submission ended. With the Concord weakening and the galaxy uniting, the final chapter would not be decided by war alone, but by what kind of future would rise from the ruins.
The galaxy did not fall into silence after the Void Crown was destroyed. Instead, it began to talk. Systems that had once whispered now spoke openly. Leaders who had ruled in fear for generations called assemblies of their own people. Old flags were lowered. New ones were imagined. The Concord still existed, but it no longer decided everything. Fleets that once moved only under Concord command now stayed in their home systems. Shipyards stopped producing tribute vessels and started building defenses instead. Trade routes shifted, old alliances cracked. And in the middle of it all stood humanity, tired, wounded, and watching. On Earth, the cost of resistance was everywhere. Memorials filled public squares. Names were etched into stone faster than anyone liked. Children asked why some parents would never come home. Ilara Vance visited one such memorial late at night. No cameras, no guards, just names. She ran her fingers along the cold surface and felt the weight of every decision she had made. Was it worth it? She whispered, not knowing who she was asking. There was no answer, only the quiet truth that freedom never came without loss. In space above Earth, Admiral Chen Arlo reviewed incoming transmissions. Many were requests for help, some were warnings, a few were threats. But one message stood out. It was from the Concord, a formal request for dialogue. They want to talk, Chen said, disbelief in his voice. Ilara looked up slowly. Not as rulers? Chen shook his head. As equals. The news spread quickly. Some humans were furious. After everything, they asked? After all the deaths? Others were cautious. Talking doesn't mean trusting, they said. Ilara understood both sides. But she also understood something else. War had broken the old order. Only words could build a new one. The meeting was arranged in neutral space, not in the Crystal Hall, but aboard an empty station rebuilt from old ruins, a deliberate choice. No thrones, no symbols of dominance. When Ilara entered the chamber, only 3 Concord representatives were present. They looked smaller somehow, older. We cannot return to what we were, one admitted. The galaxy will not allow it. And you? Ilara asked. What do you want? The Concord representative hesitated. To survive, they said at last. Ilara nodded. So does everyone else. Talks began. Not easy, not clean, but real. For the first time in thousands of years, the Concord listened instead of commanding. Outside the chamber, the galaxy waited, because whatever came next would not just end a war, it would decide whether the future was built on fear or choice. And as negotiations began, one final question remained. Could former enemies truly build peace, or would the past drag them back into darkness? The negotiations lasted for months. They were slow, tense, and often painful. Every meeting reopened old wounds. Every proposal reminded someone of a world lost, a fleet destroyed, a family never reunited. There were moments when voices rose, when talks nearly collapsed, when walking away felt easier than continuing. Ilara Vance stayed through all of it. She listened more than she spoke. That alone changed everything. The Concord representatives were not used to being heard. They were used to being obeyed. Now they faced species who demanded explanations, apologies, and guarantees. You ruled through fear, one alien delegate said during a session.
You taught us that silence was survival. And we were wrong, a Concord representative admitted, their voice heavy. Fear gave us control, but it also blinded us. That single sentence traveled across the galaxy faster than any fleet ever had. For the first time, the Concord had admitted fault. Not all Concord leaders agreed. Some walked away. Some threatened renewed war. But their voices were fewer now, weaker, because the galaxy had changed. A new alliance was forming. Not an empire, not a replacement Concord, but a shared agreement between equals. They called it the Free Systems Accord. There would be no tribute, no forced military service, no protectorate status. Each species would govern itself. The accord existed only to defend, never to conquer. It was imperfect, everyone knew that, but it was honest. On Earth, people followed the talks with cautious hope. Veterans watched with folded arms. Families of the fallen listened with quiet hearts. One night, Ilara received a private message. It was from the sister of Commander Jalen Cross. "I hated you for sending him," the message read. "I still do sometimes, but he believed in what you were trying to build. Please don't let it fail." Ilara cried for the first time in years, not in public, not as an ambassador, but as a human who carried too many names in her heart. At the final session, the remaining Concord representatives made a choice. They would dissolve the old council. No more rulers of 10,000 worlds. They would join the accord as one voice among many, or stand alone. The decision fractured what remained of the Concord. Some joined, some vanished into isolation. But the galaxy did not fall apart. It steadied itself, slowly, carefully. Freedom, it turned out, was heavier than chains, but it was also stronger. And with the old order finally laid to rest, the galaxy stood on the edge of something new, something fragile, hopeful, and entirely its own.
2 years after the first human refused to kneel, the galaxy gathered at Terminus Gate once more. The gate had been repaired, but it no longer felt like a weapon or a threat. It was open space now, free passage, guarded by no single power. Floating nearby was a simple memorial. No glowing symbols, no grand statues, just stone and metal, arranged in a wide ring, drifting gently among the stars. Thousands of names were carved into it. Human names, alien names, names from worlds that had once been silent. Ilara Vance stood before the memorial, older now, more gray in her hair, more weight in her eyes. Representatives from dozens of species stood with her, some tall, some small, some shaped in ways humans still struggled to understand. But they all stood as equals. "We are not here to celebrate war," Ilara said softly, her voice carried across open space. "We are here to remember why it happened." She touched the stone gently. They were farmers, engineers, pilots, parents, people who never wanted to be heroes. Her voice trembled. They chose to stand anyway. Across the galaxy, billions watched in silence. The Free Systems Accord was no empire. It had no rulers, no thrones. Disagreements still happened, arguments still flared, but no world was forced to bow. No species was erased for refusing. Peace was no longer enforced, it was chosen. After the ceremony, Ilara stayed behind as others departed. She found one name she had searched for many times: Jalen Cross. She rested her hand beside it. "We're trying," she whispered. "We're not perfect, but we're free." There was no answer, only the quiet presence of stars, and that was enough. Elsewhere in the galaxy, former Concord worlds rebuilt on their own terms. Some failed, some thrived. All learned what freedom truly meant.
risk, responsibility, and choice. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. They never wanted to. They had simply reminded it of something ancient and powerful, that fear is loud but fragile, that empires fall but ideas endure, and that even the smallest voice, when it refuses to be silent, can change everything. The age of forced peace was over. The age of chosen futures had begun, and for the first time in its long history, the galaxy belonged to everyone. The end. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.